Within this relationship, there was a moment of warm sun, but the rest of it seemed to be very gloomy and dark. Just like Taylor Swift is defined as New York City, her love interest is defined as London. This reminds me of Willow. I was the water when your ship rolled in that night. There are lots of feelings of entrapment that are on the Tortured Poets department. There seems to be a lack of lively energy in the relationship. He doesn't really want to be there anymore. That to me is a thesis statement. There was nothing to revive anymore. Nothing to revive. Hi everyone, and welcome to this video. Today we are going to be analyzing the song So Long London by Taylor Swift from her newest album, The Tortured Poets Department. We are going to be discussing the song meaning for So Long London, looking at things like diction, which is a word choice, the connotation of those words. We're going to look at metaphors, imagery, etc. If you are new here, this is an analysis channel, so I analyze song lyrics very in depth through the lens of literary analysis. I do cover different artists, but a lot of Taylor Swift. So far, we're sitting at over 50 Taylor Swift analyses, so feel free to take a look around, and let's just dive in. I will go ahead and link my The Tortured Poets Department analysis playlist below. This is not the first analysis from this album, and there is definitely more to come. In my tracklist predictions video, I predicted that this song would be bidding farewell, bidding adieu to our London boy, and that turned out to be correct. My other predictions about this album were not correct at all, but at least I got this one. As we know, Taylor Swift did end a 6-year-long relationship with Joe Alwyn. Joe Alwyn is rumored to have been the muse that inspired the song London Boy from her album Lover. Before we dive into this analysis, I do want to state that we don't know if these songs are 100% autobiographical. They could be inspired by Taylor's life, but they could be extrapolated out, hyperbolized, and fictionalized. So we don't want to say with certainty that any songs are directly 100% related to any person. Although, like I've said in my previous The Tortured Poets Department song analysis, at this point it is becoming kind of difficult to ignore Taylor's personal life because it's become an integral part of the art we're consuming. Usually I would steer away from trying to connect songs to people because, very respectfully, I don't really care who she's dating or who the songs are about, but it's come to the point where discussing it adds more value to the analysis. So that's why I will be incorporating a little bit of that into my analyses moving forward. So this song I do think is one of the very few songs on this album that is inspired by Taylor's relationship with Joe Alwyn. I want to talk about the concept of setting in place, and I did touch upon this in my track predictions video as well. I talked about that a little bit more in depth in that video. I'm going to summarize it right now for this analysis. Setting in place are very important, and they're very interesting through an analysis perspective because a setting can define many things for a person. It can define an era of their life. It can define a relationship, romantic or platonic. It can define an internal state for them. When this person was living here, they thought about love in this way, or their emotional state, their spiritual state was in this way specifically. So settings, different places, different locations can hold lots of meaning and memories for people. In this song here, London, a physical location, is meant to represent a person, a former lover, and also a relationship as well. Taylor Swift herself is New York City, right? Taylor is synonymous with New York in the Taylor Swift universe, but she also loves London and England, and she was in love with a London boy. So long means farewell. It means bye. Boy, bye, bye, bye. If you're a millennial, it means bye, bye, bye. Connotation of so long, when we compare it to a synonym like the word bye, has an effect. The connotation of so long feels more formal, it feels a little bit more conservative, and it feels more final as well. It's like you're going to be traveling a very far ways away after you leave this place. So long, till we meet again, right? If they meet again. It feels much more dramatic and it feels kind of fatalistic. The reason I'm saying that is because in an interview about the Tortured Poets Department, Taylor Swift herself mentioned that this album is kind of like a fatalistic album with hyperbolic statements and concepts all throughout. And I think when we say So Long London, it kind of mythologizes everything. And I talked about this when I analyzed the song Fortnight. The diction Fortnight, the word Fortnight mythologizes that song a little bit because it's more proper. It's a word in Old English. Certain stories can appear to be faded in a way when we use specific diction to discuss them. When I think about So Long, it makes me think that we're talking about an old story, and this love story was something of substance and value, or it was something that was very significant. The diction So Long to me has that sort of heaviness and grandness associated with it. So here the protagonist is saying goodbye to London, so long London, to the literal place, because our protagonist could have been living there, which I'm pretty sure Taylor was, but also to the relationship that resided in London and to the London boy, which she was in love with. The intro of the song is really interesting. When I reacted to the Tortured Poets Department for the first time, I said it sounded like Christmas in England. It sounds like a choir to me, and when I think about a choir, I think about a proceeding of some sort. I honestly don't know what sort of choir or proceeding this introduction would be. If you guys have any ideas, feel free to tell me down below in the comments. But it seems like a choir at like an event of sorts, and they are singing So Long London, which mythologizes this song even more in my opinion. Verse 1. The first line of this verse is really beautiful and really satisfying. It says, "I saw in my mind fairy lights through the mist." That's such a satisfying lyric. I just love the way it's phrased. I love the diction. It's a lighter connotation. Let's break it down. It says, I saw in my mind, and my mind makes me think of a daydream. And I say daydream because of fairy lights. Fairy lights are just cute. They have such a cute connotation to them, and they're just adorable. And it's like, oh my gosh, date night. Oh my gosh, daydream vibes. Like, fairy lights are cute. Even the word fairy is cute and whimsical. And then it says through the mist. When I think about mist, I think about morning, like morning mist. Mornings are a positive time of the day. They're a new beginning. It's the introduction of light imagery into the day as well. I also think about mist in relation to fog. Fog, in my opinion, is very foreboding and ominous because it's more dense than mist. You can't see through dense fog, but if there's mist, you can usually still see through it. It's not a safety concern. You still know like what it looks like around you. You know what the vibes are. There's still visibility. So far, every part of this line has a light sort of connotation. Nothing is heavy and things are cute. Then it says, I kept calm and carried the weight of the rift. We're getting some more heaviness coming our way. The phrase I kept calm indicates that the situation at hand was a sort of situation that could cause someone to not be calm. She had to decide to be calm in this scenario. And the way she kept calm was by having that daydream to see the fairy lights in the mist. It's like escapism vibes to try to survive. So that's kind of heavy. And she carried the weight of the rift. The rift is like a fight, but I did look it up because I wanted a proper definition. I thought it would be of value here. So let's actually define a rift more concretely. A rift can be defined as a serious break in friendly relations between two people or two nations. Interesting. The reason I find value in these definitions that include like friendly relations between actual nations is because in this album, Taylor does refer to herself as a queen multiple times. Queens rule nations, right? They have a kingdom. That adds another layer of analysis and meaning to this, if that's something that resonates with you. Also, thinking about a rift as a rift between two nations makes me think of the song Exile. I've been thinking about the song Exile so often when analyzing these songs. Talked about it a little bit in my Fortnite analysis. I'm probably going to mention it again in my analyses that are to come. When we think about a rift through this definition as a serious break in friendly relations, it gives more heaviness to this word. It makes it seem more catastrophic and tragic. Pulled him in tighter each time he was drifting away. So our protagonist here has a lot of pressure on her. She is carrying the weight of this fight, a heavy fight. And I don't think it's just one fight. I think it's just the breakdown of a relationship dynamic. The dynamic that is being set up here is that this is a romantic relationship, and one person, our protagonist, seems to be much more invested in this relationship than the other person. The other person is showing a lot of disinterest. They seem checked out, and it has now become the protagonist's task to try to keep the relationship together. Our protagonist is valuing the relationship, but the other party, the love interest, is not. When it says he was drifting away, it illustrates that he was not interested anymore, and we don't know the reason why. When I look through the lyrics of the Tortured Poets Department, I would assume it's due to maybe like depression or sadness, because we have the mention of him sacrificing them to like the blue gods, or when he's feeling blue, We'll get to that lyric and we'll discuss it when we get there. Or it could just be something different, right? Maybe he just was no longer interested in the relationship. Maybe it didn't have anything to do with his mental health. We don't know what happened. I'm not trying to comment on any specific person's mental health. I don't think that's appropriate of me to do. At this point, I am extrapolating it out and just going based off of the lyrics here. It does say that the protagonist pulled him in tighter each time he was drifting away. So this issue here, this breakdown of the dynamic, seemed to have been going on for a long time, and maybe it was a pattern of behavior where the other person was pulling away and the protagonist had the duty to pull him back. It was a role that she assigned to herself. Then it says, my spine split from carrying us up the hill. In Taylor Swift songs, we do have the mention of bones every now and then, and the breaking of bones or the healing of bones, and that's meant to reflect the depth of emotional pain, right? Emotional pain is intangible, but a bone breaking is very tangible and you can witness it. This is something that can show up in an X-ray. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking about King of My Heart, which is one of my favorite Taylor Swift songs, and that beautiful, beautiful bridge. Is this the end of all the endings? All my broken bones are mending. With all these nights we're spending. So the protagonist's spine split from the weight that she was carrying, and she wasn't carrying it on even land. She was carrying it uphill, which is very difficult, a very treacherous path, some may argue. The protagonist could potentially become emotionally and mentally paralyzed from this. She's in a great deal of emotional pain. It's not just the weight of the relationship she's carrying, but it's the weight of a relationship with someone who is so checked out. Right? It's his baggage on top of the baggage of the relationship as a whole. If we were to view the relationship as its own entity, it's the relationship plus the entity that's the baggage of the other person, and also her own baggage. So it's like 3 pieces of really large luggage when she should only be taking her own. This is also illustrating that this is an uphill battle, one that she will likely lose. So we can view the up the hill as kind of like a foreshadow, if we want. Wet through my clothes, weary bones caught the chill. The protagonist here is starting to succumb to the elements. It's raining. They're probably in England, right? So it's probably raining. Her clothes are wet. She's still outside trying to go uphill. She's not able to take a break. I don't think she has time to build a campfire, right? It's not even land. Where is she going to stop and rest? There's no rest spot, no tent. I wanted to find the word weary because I think it's going to add more value to this analysis. Weary can be defined as feeling or showing tiredness, especially as a result of excessive exertion. In our context, excessive emotional exertion or lack of sleep. Lack of sleep because she's too busy lugging everything up a hill. Her bones are tired. Her bones are emotionally tired. This is affecting her physiological, tangible state. She's been chilled to the bone, to the core, to her essence, to perhaps her soul. Weary bones caught the chill. She is becoming maybe literally sick due to the elements here, but metaphorically, she's becoming emotionally sick. Her body is starting to break down because she's been carrying everything, right? And a person can only carry so much. So her bones here are not only broken, but they're also sick. I stopped trying to make him laugh, stopped trying to drill the safe. The protagonist took on the emotional labor in this relationship. That's what the first half of this lyric is showing me. She made efforts to make him laugh. Maybe he was no longer laughing at her jokes, so she had to try harder instead of just being herself. Stop trying to drill the safe. In this metaphor, the safe, which is a very heavy metal box that has a keypad or a lock with a combination, the safe here is meant to represent the love interest. He is not accessible just by opening the door or by knocking. It's a safe. There's a combination. There's a code. Maybe there's multiple codes, combination locks. Maybe the combination lock, instead of being 4 digits, it's 8 digits. Maybe there are special symbols and capitalizations. Maybe it's a digital one. And the thing about safes is that they house valuables. If someone has a safe, they're going to put their gold in there, or their very expensive jewelry, or other things that are of the utmost importance. In this safe, I would argue there is a love. The protagonist's lover is no longer granting her access to that. We don't know the scenario. We don't know if he has the ability to grant access to that or not. But regardless, this is something that she used to have access to. And the fact that she's trying to drill the safe shows us that she's given up on trying to find out what the combination is. The combination is not her birthday. It's not the cats' names. It's not their anniversary. It's been changed, and she doesn't know what it is. So she's trying to infiltrate the safe. One could argue this indicates that the safe and the contents of the safe are no longer for her. They're not meant for her. If you're trying to access love, it should be easily accessible to you. You shouldn't need to drill a safe for it. If it's in a safe, that's good because not everyone has access to it. You don't want your lover to be giving out love to everyone, but the combination is something you should know intuitively, right? There has been a really big shift in the dynamic, and our protagonist is getting broken down. She's starting to give up. He is losing her, and the elements are just too harsh for her to carry on. Chorus. I interrupt this video with a very special message from myself. It's from me. I sponsored my own video. I am restarting my consulting services. If you want me to help you with your own unique lyrics or your own unique poetry, if you are a tortured poet and want a second set of eyes on your work, I can help you with that. I got you. There's going to be more information in the links down below. This is a service that I offered a while ago, so there are reviews from people who have used my services, so you can also check that out. Back to the video you actually clicked here for. Thinking, how much sad did you think I had? Did you think I had in me? The protagonist here is saying, how much of this sadness do you think I could take? Everyone has their limits, right? Some people's threshold for feeling these very dark emotions is higher than other people's, but everyone has a limit. And the fact that the protagonist is saying this shows us that the love interest had awareness that she was getting sad. He had awareness of the state she was in, but he either kept pushing or he just wasn't taking action. There was some level of awareness here. That's what the lyrics are indicating to me. Oh, the tragedy. This is something that's catastrophic, right? This is, again, mythologizing the love story in a way. I've talked about this concept in my previous videos. And it says, so long, London. The phrase so long, London, or the lyric, it's kind of like a gentle, somber resolve. Protagonist is just tired. She can't take it anymore. You'll find someone. The literal place, physical location of London will find someone else to reside there. And the London boy will find someone who has the combination to that safe. Verse 2. I didn't opt in to be your odd man out. The phrase opt in means like choosing to participate in something. So the protagonist is saying she didn't choose to participate in this relationship to be the odd man out. First of all, the phrase odd man out, it's not a romantic sort of word. The odd man out is usually used to describe maybe like a team or a class, like in school or like at your work. There can be like an odd man out. An odd man out refers to someone who is not really accepted by the group or someone who just simply doesn't fit into the group. So the protagonist here is saying like, I didn't sign up to be someone who doesn't fit in within our own relationship. This indicates that this has become her new reality. She no longer fits in to this group, and this group being a two-person relationship. She doesn't fit in with him anymore. It's no longer a match. I founded the club she's heard great things about. This is very ironic, and this makes me think that the protagonist maybe is more present with other people and not with her. The love interest is talking to this person, this she. Who is she? Who is this person? The love interest may be talking to them, and this new girl is maybe an acquaintance, and she's like, yeah, I love this, I love that. And the love interest is like, oh my God, that's so cool. But the protagonist is out here saying like, what do you mean that's so cool? I like those same things, or I liked those things first. I taught you about those things. I created those things. I created the club that she is saying good things about. He's not giving credit where credit is due. He no longer sees her. The love interest no longer sees our protagonist anymore. And even if people share similarities with our love interest, or they have things that they're doing that have been inspired by the love interest, he doesn't notice that. He just is turning a blind eye, and it could be intentional or it can be subconscious. Regardless, it's not a healthy dynamic. I left all I knew, you left me at the house by the heath. So the protagonist could have left her actual home in New York. Again, I don't know if this is autobiographical or not, but she could have left her home in New York and traveled across the pond to settle down there. She created a second home base. So she did leave all she knew, if we think about it in that way, to be with this person. However, he left her home alone by the heath. And I didn't know what heath meant, so I did look it up. A heath can be defined as an area of open, uncultivated land, especially in Britain, that usually has shrubby vegetation and rough grass. So it's a house that's by open land. It's not a house in a city that's bustling. That's one way we can look at this. It's bringing forth a feeling of more isolation. So the protagonist's love left her alone in this house, and this house is in an area that's more isolated. Maybe being by the heath is something they wanted. It wasn't lonely when the relationship was going well, but when they're left alone there, it hits different. Then the protagonist says that she stopped CPR because there's no use. The relationship here was dying, and the protagonist was keeping it alive through performing a metaphorical CPR, but she stopped with the chest compressions. There is no use because, as she says, the spirit, the soul was gone. There was nothing to revive anymore. Nothing to revive. We would have never come to. The protagonist has that awareness now. And then the protagonist says something that really is devastating. She says, "And I'm pissed off you let me give you all that youth for free." That's haunting. That's haunting. Your youth is something of value, right? And every age has value. I don't want you guys to think I'm saying that there's only value in being young. But when you're young, you're still trying to figure yourself out. And if a relationship isn't working out, it's better to not be in that relationship so you can focus on yourself, to get to know yourself better. It's a shame to waste any amount of time with someone that's not good for you. And it hits different when it's your youth because there's so much of your foundation you have yet to build. The protagonist says that he let her give her youth. That to me indicates that this could have been called off earlier. He was allowing her, letting her spend her youth with him, meaning that there could have been action taken to not have this happen. He could have broken it off earlier. That's how I'm interpreting that. Chorus number 2. I really enjoy how the phrase "so long" is used in different ways throughout this song, having different definitions. So prior to this, in the first chorus, it meant farewell. Now it's meant to depict a very long amount of time. So coming from verse 2 into chorus 2, it says, "And I'm pissed off you let me give you all that youth for free for so long, London," really pointing to how long she spent with this person and how long he, the love interest, let this go on. And she's directing this towards London, the place, but here I'm thinking about the London boy specifically. The place, the physical location of London is of course synonymous with the love interest. Here they are very much intertwined. Just like Taylor Swift is defined as New York City, her love interest is defined as London. Stitches undone. Any healing that happened has been undone, and perhaps there are deeper scars now. 2 graves, 1 gun. The gun is representing the cause of death. 2 people died with 1 cause. There has been a metaphorical emotional death that has happened here. I'll find someone. So initially in chorus 1, it said you'll find someone else to live in London and someone else to be your, romantic partner. But now the protagonist is saying, I will find someone. I'll find a new place to live, no longer in London, and I'll also find a new lover who actually wants to be with me. Bridge. And you say I abandoned ship, but I was going down with it. This reminds me of Willow. I was the water when your ship rolled in that night. His ship rolled into her water. If we want to think about this, about the same relationship, again, we don't know. And as Taylor said, Evermore and Folklore were fictional, but it's interesting to talk about these themes, right? If this is linked to Willow, then his ship came into her harbor, into her waters. Now, his ship that he brought in is going down, and he's like, you're abandoning ship. Abandoned ship is a phrase that means that you are kind of like escaping or leaving the ship behind that's sinking. It's sinking here because there's a problem in the relationship. There's been like a leak and nothing can fix it. Maybe he's abandoned ship, but she hasn't. She's committed to this relationship. Even though he's the one that came here, he's the ship, she's going down with it. She is sacrificing herself with it when she doesn't need to. She is not as responsible. That's one way we can interpret this, because she's holding dead weight at this point. She's going down with it. She's sacrificing herself to try to save this relationship. She is no longer acting in a dignified way. She's brought herself down, and it's getting to be dehumanizing at this point. My white knuckle dying grip. That illustrates how hard she is holding on to this relationship. It's a white knuckle because she's holding on so tightly, it's cutting off her circulation. She is really fighting to hold on to this relationship and to keep it alive. Then it says, holding tight to your quiet resentment. Resentment can be defined as like bitterness. When someone is feeling resentment, they like don't really want to be where they're at and they are doing something they don't want to do. It's just someone who doesn't want to be there and there's anger associated with it. I do think about like anger in addition to bitterness when I think about resentment. The resentment here is quiet. It's quiet, which brings forth a feeling of like seething, like someone's seething, like really, really pissed off. When something is quiet, it can build up and then it'll flow out or explode outwards. She's holding on to the quiet resentment with a white knuckle dying grip. She's really taking on a lot and being accepting of a lot to try to keep this relationship alive. She's aware of the resentment, but she's still kind of invested. I do think it's interesting that we had quiet treason in the song Fortnight, and here we have quiet resentment. In my opinion, these songs are about different relationships if we are to hypothesize about it. I do think the song is about Joe Alwyn, maybe, and I think that Fortnight is maybe about Maddie Healy. But just this concept of there being like a quiet sort of betrayal is interesting to me. Perhaps the protagonist didn't see this coming with either relationship. Then it says, and my friend said it isn't right to be scared every day of a love affair. It seems like the protagonist was walking on eggshells every day, which is very unhealthy. In my first time reaction to the Tortured Poets Department album, I talked about how it seems like this love interest is withholding love, whether it's on purpose or not, and that's causing this protagonist to panic and walk on eggshells and just be terrified. That really does seem to be what is happening here. At least that's one interpretation. The word love affair to me is interesting because I would never talk about like a very long relationship as a love affair. A love affair, first of all, seems very short term. It seems very fickle and it lacks depth. Maybe that's how the protagonist is viewing the relationship at this point after everything has happened. Then it says, every breath feels like rarest air. Breath equals life, in my opinion. In order to be alive, someone needs to be able to breathe. There seems to be a lack of lively energy in the relationship. The protagonist feels stifled. She feels like she can't breathe in it because there's so much quiet resentment around her, and that resentment is probably starting to suck out all the air in the room when you're not sure if he wants to be there. That to me is a thesis statement of like this bridge and of this relationship. He doesn't really want to be there anymore. There's been a shift in the dynamic, and we don't know if he has his own things going on. We don't know what is causing this. He doesn't want to be there. He's not into it anymore, but he's not taking steps to break off the relationship. The protagonist is just being meant to deal with it herself, and she's trying to keep it together. Chorus number 3. We have some repetition of lyrics here. So how much sad did you think I had? Did you think I had in me? And then it says how much tragedy. She's saying, how much tragedy did you think that I had in me? How much tragedy could she take? Just how long did you think I'd go before I'd self-implode? The protagonist really has had a loss of dignity here, in my opinion, and loss of self-esteem. And the way she's saying this, like, how long did you think I could do this? It makes me think that, at least from her perspective, maybe the protagonist was trying to see how far he could push her. How far would she go to prove her love and devotion to the relationship? That's one way we can think about this. Before I'd have to go be free. There are lots of feelings of entrapment that are on the Tortured Poets Department. The protagonist felt shackled by this relationship, perhaps. That's what this last line is indicating to me. She felt like perhaps she was in the slammer in this relationship. There's only so much someone can take, right? And it seems like she was deciding to try to save this relationship, but that decision turned into shackles really quickly for her. Verse number 3. Verse 3 says, you swore that you loved me, but where were the clues? This is very ironic and it's very heartbreaking. I'm thinking about actions versus words. You guys, I love words. This whole channel is about how much I love words. But in real life, words don't really have much value unless they are paired with action, with persistent action, with a pattern of action over a very long period of time. And also with vibes. Like, words without vibes don't have value either. I died on the altar waiting for the proof. Ooh. I'm thinking about a wedding altar because I do think, based on other lyrics that are potentially about this relationship from prior albums, the protagonist, and again, I'm extrapolating this out from any people, they could have been talking about marriage. So she was waiting at the altar to get married, and she died while waiting. That's horrendous, you guys. That's a horrendous image to have. She was waiting for proof that she was loved on a wedding altar. No value in the promises, no value in the words at all, but she believed them despite the lack of proof. You sacrificed us to the gods of your bluest days. Okay. I really need to make a video talking about the colors blue and gold, especially after watching the Fortnite video as well, which is interesting because that I don't think is about this relationship, but I digress. That's a conversation for another time. This relationship, Taylor's 6-year-long relationship with Joe Alwyn, has had the colors blue and gold associated with it for a while. I'm not going to get into all of that and that lore right now, that literary analysis lore. However, let's talk about the color blue in this context. Bluest days to me means saddest days. The color blue is often meant to depict the emotion of sadness. If someone is feeling blue, it means they're feeling sad, they're feeling down. Bluest days means that this has been a prolonged thing or a pattern of behavior. So maybe this love interest did suffer from some sort of depression or some sort of like mental or emotional disorder. Again, I am not tying this to a specific person at all. I would never tie like mental health things or emotional health things to a specific person. I just find that very inappropriate. I'm just going based off of the lyrics here. This love interest is sacrificing this relationship, this love, to the gods that are ruling his bluest days. He is choosing to worship those gods of like depression, we can say, as opposed to the gods of love or to this relationship. Giving mild false god vibes, but in a different context. He's more committed to his sadness than to his lover. That's one way we can think about it. And I'm just getting color back into my face. So although this love interest has had some hardships perhaps with their mental health or emotional health, the love interest here seems to be physiologically sick due to all of this because she lost the color in her face. As they're breaking up, the protagonist is healing. She's getting color back in her face. The protagonist then says, I'm just mad as hell because I loved this place. Place being London, maybe, like literally London, like it's cute during Christmas time, like we stan. Or place could mean London, literally, right? Maybe she did love living there. She moved there, right? She loved the London boy, but she loved the physical place as well. Place could also be the relationship. She loved being in this relationship with him. She loved the dynamics. She loved the intimacy. She loved the jokes, the dirtiest jokes that he saved for her. She loved how this relationship was when it was good. Chorus number 4. She loved this place for so long. London. Again, we have another definition of so long here meant to depict a long period of time. Had a good run, a moment of warm sun. This is really interesting and really important. We also had this like notion in songs that I think are about Maddie Healy. We'll discuss that later. But the notion of having just a little bit of goodness, a little pocket of goodness within a longer time period. The relationship was a longer time period, and ideally you would want the entire relationship to be filled with goodness. But no, only just a little bit of light imagery, a little bit of sunlight was present here in this really long relationship, which to me is not healthy. Not every day is going to be perfect, but your relationship should at the very least be neutral all the time, and then pockets of like extra goodness. Like bare minimum, that's what the vibes should be. So the protagonist here had a good run with this relationship, a moment of warm sun. So sunlight here brings forth light imagery, which is often positive, especially when compared to dark imagery, right? Light imagery in the sun can represent positivity. It can represent just good vibes in general. It can represent truths and understanding. It can represent a lot of good things. Here I am interpreting warm sun as positivity, as good vibes, and I'm also interpreting warm sun as something that's healing. When we think about the warm sun, it sounds like it's very enjoyable to be under. It's not too hot, right? And I'm thinking about the sunlight, the rays hitting. It's a very romantic and cute sort of picture I have in my head. The warm sun here, the light imagery is not being associated with the entirety of the relationship, but rather with just a moment. So within this relationship, there was a moment of warm sun that was perfect and wonderful, but the rest of it seemed to be very gloomy and dark. But I'm not the one. She has recognized that she's not the one for him. She's not his forever. That's horrifying to come to the conclusion of, especially after a long relationship, but it's also very freeing because that means you can move on and you don't have to pull dead weight up the hill. Now we're at the last verse. We have repeated lyrics. So long, London, stitches undone, 2 graves, 1 gun, you'll find someone. That's how the song ends, with you'll find someone. It ends in a respectful way with saying, you know, the other person will find someone. They will find someone that they actually want to be with. They will find someone that is actually the one, right? She's really recognizing that it's not her. You can't force someone to want to be with you. This is all really, really heartbreaking, right? Again, especially after 6 years, if this is inspired by that relationship. And that is the end of the song. This song is about a relationship that has become one-sided, that only one person is fighting to keep alive. It's about a love interest who perhaps has some mental or emotional issues that are causing him to withhold love from the protagonist. We don't know know if he would withhold this love from anyone he's in a relationship with, or her specifically. And I say that because of the lyric where the protagonist said that she founded the club that this other person is interested in. Overall, this song has a very simple and heartbreaking thesis, which is pretty much he's just not that into you anymore, even though you've been with them for a very long time. Like, you're not the one. We can also think about this thesis as just being, you're not the one. It sucks. It's heartbreaking, especially when you've sacrificed so much of yourself, so much of your metaphorical health to try to save the relationship. But if someone doesn't want to be with you, you can't force it. It's going to give you the freedom when you come to that realization to move forth in your life, to find someone who is meant to be with you and who will actively choose you. That's all I have for this video. Please join the conversation down below. Tell me how you interpret this song. If you interpret anything differently, please feel free to share it down below. I love hearing your thoughts. My consulting services are linked down below as well. Feel free to take a look if that's something that interests you. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. I really, really appreciate it. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.